Hi everyone, I'm Dr. John Douillard. Sorry for the technical difficulties before, but what I'd like to talk about today is the relationship between teenage anxiety and circadian medicine. Circadian medicine is Nobel Prize winning science. It's a really important thing. It's linked to a host of imbalances that we oftentimes experience, and we have this issue with teenage anxiety, which is absolutely on the rise. In the last 10 years, which with kids between 13 and 18 years, we see a 20% increase in teenage anxiety. We see from the NIH, a study showed that 1 in 3 kids, teenagers, have anxiety issues. If you are tuned into the teenage world, you know that there is an absolute significant increase in mood-related concerns and anxiety concern with teenagers today, way more than we've ever seen in the past. It's an absolutely real thing. Screens are directly linked to that. Studies show, a meta-analysis of over 13 different studies found that screen time was directly linked to a host of mental and emotional and physical imbalances. And we do plenty of screen time. Studies show that adults, and kids do this way more than adults, they're on their phone or checking their phone at least 52 times per day and on a screen at least 9 hours a day. That's a crazy number. And what screens do, what the blue light does in a screen is it blocks the suprachiasmatic nuclei in your brain, which is the connection between your biological clocks and nature's circadian rhythms. And that relationship is really critically important. In fact, Nobel Prize winning science, we did a whole yoga journal yoga course called Ayurveda 101, which is absolutely the connection to the circadian clock, understanding the seasonal, daily, monthly rhythms and how to live, yoga, breathe, and meditate and sync in harmony with those rhythms. It's really important. So understanding the relationship between the circadian clock and what's happening with teenagers, I thought was just a fascinating discovery. So I went and I looked at all the research on what blue light does and the damage it does to us. And then I looked at the imbalances caused by circadian medicine. And circadian medicine says that there's relationships to mood-related issues, behavioral issues, and learning issues. Well, then when you look at the impact of blue light, which has damaging effects, the studies show that it causes things like behavioral anxiety, hyperactivity, inattention, low self-esteem, low decreased feelings of well-being, decreased psychosocial health and relationships, decreased cognition of blue light. In fact, and also studies show that it's linked to a circadian imbalance. Studies like things like metabolic syndrome, which has to do with blood sugar and triglycerides and obesity and things like that. We see that on the list with blue light damage, screen time damage, and we also see it on the list of circadian imbalances. Studies show that blue light can cause retinal damage. One study I wrote about recently at LifeSpa.com on blue light damage showed that it actually caused brain damage. So this is why I bought my whole staff, blue blocking glasses, because we're on computers all the time here, and how important it is for us to have a block of the blue light, not just at nighttime, because the blue light is impacting us all day long. But kids tend to be on their phones or on their screens way late into the night, and it overwhelms them, and it's directly linked to anxiety. There's no question about that. Studies on circadian medicine and anxiety are prevalent. Now, we also know that when you have a circadian imbalance, you have a melatonin imbalance as well. When you have blue light blocking, one of the things that blue light does is it blocks the uptake of melatonin or the production of melatonin. The light is supposed to regulate the circadian cycles. And at nighttime, when the light goes down, melatonin is supposed to be increased. But when you have blue lights on and screen times on, you end up in a situation where you don't have enough melatonin. It's classically and commonly now called melatonin deficiency. So then I said, well, let me look and see, does melatonin deficiency cause anxiety? And in study after study after study, yes, it did. So it's really important. One study they did was another meta-analysis of 12 different studies, measured a ton of people with pre-operation anxiety, which you get nervous before, situational anxiety like that. And they found that the melatonin given was as effective as the standard treatment for anxiety, which was pretty powerful. Other studies show that melatonin actually supports long-term mood support for things like stress and worry and anxiety. The studies are very, very real. So what do we have? We have a situation where we have teenage kids who are extremely anxious, who are on their phones or a pad or a screen all the time. So what do we need to do? We need to reset their circadian clock. How do you reset their circadian clock? Well, you try to get them to go to bed earlier. But they don't like to go to bed earlier. So what do? You give them something that makes them tired earlier. And that's what melatonin does. And don't think for 1 second that melatonin is a hormone. It isn't. It's a molecule that actually, when you take it, encourages the natural production of your own. It doesn't, like a hormone would, suppress your own production, which is, I think, a really interesting distinction between hormones and melatonin. So melatonin can be used then to reset your circadian clock. And what I suggest for teenagers with teenage anxiety is to take this, and I have 6 kids, right? So I've been through this, I know this routine. And so what I do is I give them, we have something called Melatonin HP, which is a 6-hour time release, which is unique to have only just 6 hours of the time release melatonin that we give. And I give that to my kids early in the evening. If I want them to go to bed at 10 o'clock, then they're going to take that around 9:15. And then by 10 o'clock, they start getting sleepy and they actually do go to bed. Without that, they have what's called delayed melatonin production, teenagers do, and then they don't get tired until way, way, way later. So you give them that early dose. It helps to reset and train their circadian clock to go to bed earlier, and then they get this big dose of melatonin that gives them the melatonin at night, which they need to rebuild, restore, repair, rejuvenate their nervous system, and the studies show that that supports healthy mood stability in a significant fashion, which is like really, really cool. So I generally do that for like about a month, 1 tablet for about a month. And then I've written a ton about what's called low dose melatonin. A researcher named Al Louie did research on how the benefits of a tiny bit of melatonin is just as effective as higher dosages. So we wean them towards a lower dose. And we have a product called low dose melatonin where 1 drop is 0.1 milligram. You can't buy 0.1 milligram at the health food store. And what I find with my patients is in this case, with the teenage anxiety, you go from the HP melatonin to 30 drops of the low dose. And because melatonin will encourage the natural production of your own melatonin, you will not need as much. And you're also naturally resetting your clock. So again, you won't need as much. So you slowly wean from 30 to 25 to 20 to 15 to 10 to 5 to 1 to 2 to 3, and with a teenager, you get off of it. Now, if you're old like me and you're over, 50 or 60, you may want to use melatonin to reset your circadian clock. And a lot of my patients find themselves down 1 or 2 drops of the melatonin before they go to bed, and they absolutely feel the difference with such a tiny, tiny, tiny dose. So that's the beautiful thing about melatonin. It's not, you're taking massive doses that you get at the health food store, 20 milligrams dosages for elephants and dinosaurs. It's crazy. You really need very, very little, but there's 2 ways to do it. Use it therapeutically, like the melatonin HP for a spell, and you wean with the low dose melatonin, or you can use it to hack the aging process. I've got tons of articles on melatonin and circadian medicine at LifeSpa.com. This article is current right now. It's right on the home screen at LifeSpa.com. Read the research on teenage anxiety and the relationship between a circadian medicine imbalance and a melatonin deficiency. It's profound. And I think it can make a huge difference in how your kids feel and how they navigate life, which is crazy, much crazier than ever before. All right, thanks for listening. I'm Dr. John Douillard.